Hi everyone and welcome back to SwitchUp and to our new favourite series. Well, it's not new anymore, it's about a month or two old, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to look at 6 of the most interesting games that we've been playing in the last couple of weeks and have a little bit of a chinwag about them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. So we've picked 3 games each. Don't have to be new games, just games we've been playing, as Mark said, and we just have something to say about.
If you want to save 10% on any of your games on the eShop, use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg.
Lovely. So which games have we been playing? Well, let's find out. Okay, the first game that I've been playing recently is an RPG called Astria Ascending. Now, this has some of the developers, according to the blurb that I read before playing at least, that were involved in the Final Fantasy series, as well as Bravely Default, which is a game and a series that I very much enjoy. And this is quite an interesting one, in that you play on a 2D plane. It has a bit of a look of, like, you know, the Vanillaware games, Mark?
Yep.
So things like Dragon Crown.
I actually played this one a little bit as well.
Oh, you have played this one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's, as I say, it has that 2D plane rather than your kind of more traditional either 3D environment or top-down view. And it does really have that quite striking art style to it as well.
Yeah, this is turn-based combat as well, isn't it?
It's turn-based, yeah. It's a quite traditional JRPG in that sense. But it does do some interesting things with the combat system, which I'm quite enjoying actually. These days I don't play a lot of JRPGs, you know, purely through time constraints. So when I do play one, I always check first what the combat system entails and whether there's any kind of interesting quirks or traits in there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I struggled with this one. I found the first hour or two, it was just a bit too hand-holdy. How did you find it?
Personally, I didn't find it hand-holdy. I don't think it handles its early narrative particularly well. I don't think it builds the world as well as it could.
No, that's what. Yeah. Do you know what? That's a much better description of it. I couldn't get into it, in air quotes.
Yeah,
you know?
And I can understand that completely, which is a shame because actually the story is quite interesting. It's about this team of demigods. There are 8 of you.
Okay.
And to become a demigod, you basically have to give up. You get 3 years of life in order to fulfill the role, and then you die. So you basically give up the rest of your life. But then your family gets something called harmony, and I'm not far enough in yet to know if that's like a physical currency or if that it literally just means, you know, they receive some sort of spiritual well-being, you know. But it's just quite an interesting concept that you have this kind of 3-year lifespan of this team of demigods, and then they'll die and other people will take the roles on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game, this one, because do you know what? This isn't, by the way, just to everyone watching, we haven't like got some running joke that we have to say interested as many times as possible. It's like a drinking game. No, like I'm just looking through the Steam reviews, and it's literally someone will love it and then hate it. It's a proper Marmite game.
Yeah,
it's just back and forward.
Yeah, I saw that when I bought it, which was a little while ago now. I did see that with the reviews, but the fact that there were some of the devs behind Bravely Default was kind of enough for me to think, oh, you know, I'll make my own mind up and buy it. But what I've liked about it so far is that combat system.
Yeah.
In that you have what they call FP or focus points.
Okay.
And it is kind of similar to the Bravely Default system in some respects, not quite the same, but in that you, as well as your traditional attack and, you know, your abilities you may have, you can focus for one of your turns for one of your characters, and that will gain you a focus point. And you can also gain these through hitting a character's weak point.
Right. Okay.
But you can also lose them if the enemies hit your weak points. You know, if you're weak to a particular element and they use it against you. And once you have these FP, these focus points, you can then use those in a go and buff one of your abilities. Be it, say, like your healing spell will be more potent, or your attack will be stronger, be it a physical or a magic attack. And I just, again, that's enough for me to really want to give a JRPG a go. Just having something that's slightly different about the usual turn-based formula, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't realise it's the same people that made Soldiers as well. In terms of Astria Ascending, though, what would you say is the thing that might put people off?
I think as I said, the story I don't think is delivered as well as it could be. You're kind of just plonked in, which is a shame. From what I've seen so far, again, early game, there is a job system in there, and there are skill points that you can assign to your character, but it's kind of buried away within menus. It doesn't really explain some of its key points as well as it should. And I think maybe even the 2D style will put some people off, because for the first few areas it is just left to right, and it feels a bit like, is this going to open up? Is it just going to be like this? But it does open up. It feels a bit like Child of Light from Ubisoft in some respects, in that sort of 2D JRPG. But I do think there are definitely parts there that will put it off, and I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't checked, but I would guess the Metacritic score is probably in the 60s, because you'll have those high 80s and 90s, and then you'll get a few 40s and 50s. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think you're about right. It just seems to be right slap bang in the middle, really. So, yeah, 60s.
Yeah. It's just one of those games, but that doesn't mean it's average. It just means, as you said, that there'll be people that think it's fantastic and people that just can't get on with it. You know?
Yeah. Sometimes those end up being your favourite games. You know, you love them warts and all, don't you?
Yeah, if you click with them, absolutely right. Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Right, my first one then is a game called Haiku the Robot. This one is basically, I want to be nice because I don't want to insult the developer because it's a single guy.
Right. But
it's essentially very heavily inspired, I would say, by Hollow Knight.
Okay.
It's got, do you know what? And this would be perfect for you, Glenn. This has the kind of Hollow Knight game design.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near as brutal and in brackets frustrating.
Yeah.
The combat's more accessible. It's just got really nice little touches. So it's a mechanized world. You're an alien on this like mechanized, I don't know if it's like a planet it might even be post-human, you know, like the worlds are overrun by robots and you're one of them, and some of them have started to go a bit corrupt.
Right.
And you're kind of you're not corrupt and trying to figure out and solve what's happening. But when you're killing robots and stuff, they drop in their little bolts everywhere, and you pick those up. And then when you want to heal yourself, you use those nuts and bolts, which is quite cool. And he gets this little spanner out. It's like, and it's just it's exactly the same as the Hollow Knight health mechanic where you use the souls.
Right.
But it works. It works. It's easy to kind of pick this game up, and if you've played that, you just know exactly what you're doing straight away.
If it's just to get some idea in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
If Hollow Knight didn't exist,
yeah,
and it wasn't as derivative as it sounds as it is, just on its own merits, you know, if you're not considering it a very close approximation of something else, is it a good game? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. Sorry, it's a great game.
Oh, really?
It's impressive. So it's got like in the corner of the screen, you've got like your essentially it's like your temperature gauge, and you've got to stop yourself overheating by using those nuts and bolts and things.
Oh, okay.
It's got little. It's actually, if you've, and I know I'm kind of just comparing it to other games, but it kind of might help people to visualize it.
Yeah.
If you've played Guacamelee, that's what it's called.
Guacamelee, yeah.
Guacamelee, yeah. It's similar to that in some regards. Like you go into the different areas and the doors shut down, and you got to fight certain enemies before you can progress. It is a Metroidvania, so you've got like a full open map that you can fast travel around. It's just really slickly designed. And I thought the guy was, going to be a massive veteran. But essentially, like, I don't know if it was like 3 or 4 years ago, he was like, I want to make a game.
Right.
I don't know how to make a game. Let's learn coding. And he's learned coding, and this is like his first effort, I think.
Wow, okay. That's impressive, to be fair.
And it has an art style when you see it. Have you seen this one before?
No, I've never heard of this game at all, and I don't have the capacity to check any screens at the minute, so I'm going on purely on what you're telling me.
Oh, okay. Well, it's very much an art style kind of reminiscent to, say, the Game Boy Color.
Oh, okay, right.
So, yeah, but more advanced than that. I don't know. Like
a modern interpretation of it.
Yeah, modern interpretation, but with each section having its like this area's green and this area's like a yellowy, this area's like a pinky.
Right.
It looks lovely. I think you'll probably see this and go, oh man, I could go for a bit of that. Now, some people have moaned, as they always do, that it's not very long, but it's about, I'm quite slow at games, but it's about 9 or 10 hours long, which for me, actually, it's perfect. For a first outing, little Metroidvania, some really nice boss fights. It's not overly difficult as well, which is another, to me, it's a positive to me at the moment, honestly. It's not easy, but it's not like, you might do a boss 2 times rather than 22 times.
Yeah. But even that length though, I mean, we've said this before about Metroidvanias. Traditionally, they were about 6 hours long, as long as you didn't get lost. Obviously, that's where a lot of the length came from.
Yeah.
But it's the modern day ones that have increased what people expect from one now in terms of length, not just quality.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is really concise. Like, everything's done well. He's got. It's like in your inventory, you've got this little frequency receptor. It's basically an old radio.
Right.
And to find like these secret things you're looking for, you'll see like this, I don't know how to describe it, like a visual signal gradually getting larger as you get closer to it. It's a really nice way of making you look for secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah, little things. There's a little magnet that draws things towards you, the little components. There's obviously a few upgrades here and there. I tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a slightly more fleshed out version of, that black and white Metroidvania that you really enjoyed that was like 4 hours long.
Yeah, Gato Roboto.
Yes.
Yeah,
Gato,
like that.
very much like that. Very handcrafted, but also very well done.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So sorry, that's my one. It was very long, that.
It's all right. Nice. Yeah, that sounds good. Never even heard of it. Right, my next one then was 2 games. It's a 2-game bundle that you can get on the Switch. It's Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Ghoul Patrol, the double pack.
Okay.
Now, these games first came out on the Super Nintendo back in the 90s, early to mid 90s. And I never played Zombies Ate My Neighbors back in the day. I did own Ghoul Patrol, the sequel, which wasn't as well received back then. But the reason I wanted to talk about these, I mean, first of all, because they're very good games and they're a lot of fun, but I'll get to that in a minute. But what makes me laugh, we kind of have this period in our history as Englishmen, like in the UK, where censorship was absolutely just skyrocketed, to a degree which, I mean, I'm talking 80s into the 90s. You had the video nasties debacle, if you want to call it that, which happened under Maggie Thatcher, where a whole bunch of films were classified as, they're the worst thing since sliced bread, if sliced bread is a bad thing. And, they were banned outright from the country. And then into the 90s, you had things like Ninja Turtles had to be hero turtles. We weren't allowed ninjas in our cartoons.
No.
And even this game, which, as I just said, the first one was called Zombies Ate Our Neighbours, had to be changed to just Zombies over here. I think in some other European countries as well, to be fair. So this one might be different. It might have been more of a Nintendo of Europe thing, but we weren't allowed to eat our neighbours. Do you know what I mean? They just had to just exist. They could just be zombies. And I think even some of the animations were changed. Like there's a chainsaw wielding enemy that was changed into like a lumberjack with an axe. It's just like you can chop someone up with an axe, but you can't do it with a chainsaw. Or going back to the turtles, like Leonardo could have a sword, but Michelangelo wasn't allowed nunchucks over here. They had to cut any scenes out of the cartoons where Michelangelo had a nunchuck. Like, it's just so crazy, isn't it? It's just the thought process that went on, It
is crazy. There's been so many games like that as well over the years, and now it's almost gone the other way, where it's like nothing's banned, except for in a few countries. I think, hasn't Germany got quite some strict rules post-war?
I believe so.
That we've actually seen affect the Switch.
Yes, because it's Europe, Nintendo of Europe. If something is banned in one country, then it does affect the region. So yes, that is true. And I think Australia actually have some problems with classification of games and things being banned sometimes. I think Hotline Miami possibly was banned over there. I might be completely wrong there, but that seems to ring a bell in my head. But yeah, I don't know. It just makes me laugh thinking back. The Turtles one especially, just so, because as a kid in the playground, you used to hear these like mythical stories of, they're not called heroes in other countries, they're called ninjas. Wow, what's a ninja? Just funny. But yeah, I've digressed enough. But onto the games themselves. They're like top-down shooters, obviously Super Nintendo games back in the day, so that pixel art style. Very heavy on the cultural references to horror films and in eras of horror.
Yeah. As
you take down the enemies. And you basically have to save all of your neighbours within one level and then move on to the next level. But it's just funny, like the enemies you have your zombies, of course, but then you have, like I mentioned, the chainsaw wielding, this kind of your 80s slasher films. You have body horror in there. You things like blobs, obviously the Blob film, and Pod People reminds me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There's just a lot of references to classic horror. Even the names of some of the levels reference, popular culture of the time or years before. And it's just a very fun game. It's incredibly difficult still to this day. It's very, very difficult. But in 2-player, you can play it cooperatively in 2-player. It's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I feel like I've played this actually. I feel like for some reason my brain, because I obviously had the Mega Drive and this was on the Mega Drive, I feel like my brain deleted this because I was playing Toe Jam and Earl at the same time, and my brain kind of put them into one box. But I'm looking at the images, I'm like, yeah, I definitely played this one with my brothers. I didn't realise, obviously, because I'm not a big horror fan, and plus I was a young kid, but I didn't realise it was like inspired by Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it just has those little nods in there,
Yeah. Did I ever tell you the time that it was probably the only time I ever went to the cinema to see a horror film with Bethan.
Right.
We managed to go to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Not realising this was in Australia. Did I tell you this?
No, go on.
Now, we managed to go to that film, not realising it was a horror film.
Is it the remake you went to see?
Yeah.
I take it.
Yeah.
The remake.
I don't know why. One of us, probably, I'm going to blame Bethan. One of us had seen the trailer at the start when they're like driving in. It's all like nicey. It looks like a road trip.
Right.
And for some reason, we'd only watched a tiny little bit. And then, like, when we were walking around in Brisbane, we were like, oh, look, the Chainsaw Massacre's on. That looked really nice. Let's go and watch that. And like, if you think I'm bad with horror, she's terrible. She's terrible. So going to this cinema, it's pitch black. There's no one else in there. It's the middle of the day, so we're like, oh, lovely little film. I don't know what we were thinking. Like, honestly, like, I looked around and I could see tears in the darkness.
Chainsaw Massacre.
No.
Massacre.
I know.
Like, not Chainsaw Adventure.
Chainsaw Party.
Yeah.
I know.
But even the trailer, I tell you what, right? When we stop recording, go and rewatch that trailer. Just refresh your memory, right? Because it does. You're right. It starts in the van. It looks like the old Scooby gang are going somewhere fun, I'm sure. But within seconds of having that shot, it does this noise. It sounds like an old Polaroid going off. Oh. It's this horrible noise. It's like, and I swear, within 20 seconds of the trailer, you'll go nope and turn it off.
Oh, well, no, I think. Look, I don't know if I think we thought it was, like Screams, like tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I think we maybe just thought it was like that or something. But I saw the start of the trailer without sound. I'm going to say without sound, just so it makes me feel like less of a moron. But anyway, you can imagine. I hate stuff like that, and she is just whew. But we didn't leave because we were too scared.
The original had been out for 30 years by that point.
Yeah, but
it's been out for 50 years now. Like, did it not?
50 years.
Any sort of osmosis, like not.
Look, you would have loved watching us watch that film.
Oh man,
there you go. I know.
That's fine.
I've got problems, mate. I've got problems. But with that, I'm going to move on to something much lighter.
I think we should, yeah.
Much more cheery.
Yeah.
And it's the new Shovel Knight game, Shovel Knight Dig.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I didn't really know what to expect with this, honestly, as seems to be a theme in my life, as you can tell.
Did it have any chainsaws in it?
I mean, I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be a horror. I was a bit disappointed.
It's got the word dig in it, so there's not going to be a shovel in it, that's for sure.
All right. Sarcasm. Yeah.
Lowest form of wit.
Exactly. Just a bit. This has been another one that's really divided people, and I can see why. The last Shovel Knight games have been very, a certain style. This has gone the route that's perhaps a bit oversaturated. It's gone the roguelite run route.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you start off. There's a hole in the ground. There's a little story introduction, and you jump down the hole and you go on a run. The run essentially involves trying to survive as much as you can, gradually working down, fighting bosses, and you go on. And it sounds, it might sound like I'm saying it's bad. It's not bad. It's good, but it does have some, in my opinion, some flaws. Game length isn't one of them for me. You know, you could finish this in an hour and a half. Like, you could. It's just the way it is with these. There's an RNG factor. So every time you run, there's almost that random number generator spinning in the background that will change your run. And sometimes it'll be good, and sometimes it's an absolute nightmare. Sometimes it's very frustrating. It does a few things that old games used to do, and you'll probably be able to point out some that did it. You know, like where you stick around on a screen too long, and suddenly like an all-murdering boss appears.
Right, yeah.
It does that. So if you're sitting there for too long without going down, this thing will come and just kill you with one shot.
Right, okay, yeah.
That annoys me. I was like, that's not cool. So then you've got that kind of, and I guess it's part of the gameplay, you've got that kind of I have to keep moving feeling going, which is fine, you know, it's a bit of an arcadey feeling. But unfortunately, there's a few cheap things. So there's these little annoying bird things that fly at you from off screen. So they go through all obstacles. And you haven't got a great deal of health. Like, it's quite easy to lose all of your health to quite cheap moves. Also, because whenever you jump, he does his shovel attack. So you can't just do a normal jump. When you jump, he does a shovel, which will dig a piece of ground, which will bounce you back up.
Right, okay.
So there are times where, just because of the randomness, there'll be too much diggable for you to get down. So you're going off screen and sometimes getting hit by enemies above.
Yeah.
It felt like they just needed a little bit more time in the oven to tweak the formula.
I can hear. We spoke about a game, I don't know, a month or so ago in this series, where we spoke about developers appreciating spatial awareness in their games, and it sounds like this is another one which doesn't quite get that right in terms of appreciating their own mechanics and realising that sometimes if you're going to bounce back up, don't have a bloody enemy that's going to fly into you at that moment, you know. But
exactly right.
It does sound, just from what you've said, similar to games like Dig Dug or Mr. Driller from the past, which were obviously very arcadey in nature. But if it is a roguelite, is there any permanent progression across runs, or is it not really like that? Or
yeah, you pick up you've basically got a currency collectible that you keep a percentage of at the end of your run, and then
I see.
There's a little shop you can then buy upgrades for your next run.
Right.
I think, and that's another thing, I guess. It was a bit too easy to get more powerful, so that actually the game got quite a bit easier. Yeah. Almost too easy.
It's strange, isn't it? Because we were speaking about this one the other day, but it was before you'd played it, so we were just generally talking about the release of it. And you made a good point in relating it to Super Meat Boy in terms of that game being a very well-loved game, as is the original Shovel Knight, and obviously the DLC or the expansions that came with it. And then it's kind of that, where do we go next? What do we do with this character next? And it sounds like both series have not necessarily taken a misstep, because that's very subjective, but they've got in a very different way that some people will be quite disappointed with, you know? Yeah,
do you know what? Actually, you're probably... Yeah. So, you know, like old Sonic games, when you'd have your bonus stages?
Yeah.
Like, that was great. I actually missed the quirkiness of them introducing those little random things between stages, even down to like pushing the button and the animals come popping out and run, and you know, it doesn't really serve any real purpose gameplay wise, but they're nice little quirky additions to take the same formula and add something in. I don't know why they didn't do something like that. You know, if you had your Shovel Knight, blah 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 blah, and then you had bonus stages that were essentially this dig mode, it would be perfect.
I think the problem, but see, I've got a lot of time for Shovel Knight, the first game. And I respect fully the model that they took. Obviously, it was a Kickstarter game, and they made the promises of these new chapters with the other knights in, and they fulfilled that promise. And it's such a huge game because of all of that. But I think they kind of almost expended all of their ideas doing that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because they could have made a sequel that focused on another knight and have made it a fully fleshed out game. But they kind of already done that with all of the expansions, you know, and maybe they just felt they'd run that well dry and wanted to go completely differently, you know.
Yeah, I guess it could get quite repetitive, couldn't it, for you just as a creator having to do the same thing. There you go. Oh yeah, well it's good. It is good. It's fun, but it's very arcadey. It's very short bursts, and it does suffer from a bit of RNG.
Okay. Right, my last one then is a game called Rogue Trooper, which on the Switch is called Rogue Trooper Redux. It's like the definitive version, if you like. So this is a third-person shooter from Rebellion, who, of course, made the Sniper Elite games and the Zombie Army games as well. But this one's based on a comic book series from 2000 AD called Road Trooper, of course. And I didn't realise this, actually. It never really clicked. The name should have given it away, but another area of Rebellion Publishing, actually acquired 2000 AD a while back, hence the reason obviously they used this character in one of their games. Because I was always a bit, not confused, but curious as to why they chose that particular property to make a game about. Do you know what I mean? And that's obviously why, because they owned the rights to it.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite a good game. I don't know if you've played this one. I know you've played a lot of Rebellion games, but have you played this one?
No, I watched the SwitchUp review of this way back in the day. That's my experience of it.
Oh, okay. Well, it came out in 2006 originally. I think it was on like PS2 and Xbox maybe, I forget. But I didn't play it until it was released on the Wii, which was around about 2009. And really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Now, obviously, the Wii didn't have many third-person shooters at all, you know. So to play one on the Wii was quite refreshing. And then they re-released it or ported it over to PS4 and Switch, of course, and I bought it on the PS4 because I found it dirt cheap physically, like a £5. Went on sale on the Switch for a couple of pounds, so I bought it on there as well. And it is a game I really enjoy because the story is that you play as one of this this genetic infantry, one of the soldiers in this genetic infantry that have been created because the world has become toxic after years of war, and they can survive in this harsh environment. But whilst out during a battle, they are betrayed by one of their own, and the whole squadron is wiped out apart from this one person you play as called Rogue. But each of these soldiers has like a chip inside them, and if you take the chip out quick enough from a dead soldier, it includes their conscience and their personality basically.
Okay.
And you can put this chip into one of your slots on your weapons. So there's one like on the soldier's helmet, one in their gun, one in their backpack, and the conscience of that soldier will then take over that part of your infantry and help you in the battle. And then later on, the idea was they could be put back into another body and be reborn. You know.
That's cool.
So the basic idea is that you have yourself Rogue, but you have your fellow soldiers kind of with you in terms of their chips are in your gear and they're talking to you as you play.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's just a good game. Obviously, Rebellion know what they're doing in this respect, and it's always struck me as kind of a middle ground between the very slow and deliberate nature of the Sniper Elite games with that very frantic Zombie Army gameplay. It's kind of in the middle of there somewhere, you know?
Yeah, this looks, from what you've said, it sounds like it was a bit of ahead of its time. That's some really nice ideas in there.
Yeah, well, of course it came from the comic, you know, they took that idea from the comic. But it was interesting how they implemented it into the game, you know, because you pick up scrap, I think it's called salvage, from dead enemies and whatnot, and then you can use that with the chip in your bag, and he will create further ammo or health packs for you.
Yeah.
So it's nothing. I mean, they could have just had that you just do it yourself, you know. But they implemented the ideas from the comic that way, which is quite clever, you know.
Yeah. So why haven't we got another Judge Dredd game then?
I was thinking the same thing myself, actually. I don't know. Like it just seems a source material that's just there to be used, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like it's they could do some great stuff with that Rebellion. You know, just think of the sort of game they could create. But yeah, no, they haven't. I don't know. It's a good point.
The last one was like, what was it called? Judge Dredd vs. Death, I think.
Yes,
I know
it was
that's
early
on
2000s. I seem to remember. Yeah,
and that's actually a decent game.
Yeah, but it's 20 years ago, I reckon now at least.
Maybe a new film as well. I could go for a new Judge Dredd film.
I like the last one.
That was great. That was brilliant. I thought there was going to be a sequel though.
I think it just absolutely bombed. But critically it did well, but you know, it's all about the money, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, actually it was based on that film I was telling you about, The Raid.
Yes, yeah,
we need to watch that.
I've had my eyes open for that in HMV. I want to pick that up at some point.
Yes, good film. Very good film. All right. Okay, that takes me on to my last one then, I think.
Yep.
If I can read my own writing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I actually was playing this one this morning.
Yep.
It is Jack Move.
Oh yeah, that's.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I remember it in a video, in an upcoming video. Looked quite interesting actually. Looked quite decent.
Yeah. So it's a cyberpunk RPG essentially, near future cyberpunk RPG where you essentially have the ability to perform. Wait for it. What do you think they're called?
Go on. What?
Jack Moves.
Oh yeah, I forgot what the name of the game was between you talking and asking me the question. I thought I had Bomb Jack in my head, but that's a completely different game.
Yeah. So it's got a full. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, especially the start. You start out on a heist, like the tutorial is essentially a heist that you go on. It really does remind me. There must be influences from Final Fantasy VII. The start of that game, you're literally doing something similar. You're going to blow something up.
Right.
But the way it's handled, the way the music's like intense from the get-go, it actually also reminds me. I'm actually a bit annoyed we didn't review this one because it's way better than I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I thought I just I saw the visuals. That's terrible, isn't it? I judged a book by its cover. I saw a few screenshots and was like, nah, not for me. But it actually reminds me a little bit of. Oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the name of it. I'm going to have to look. It's another one that I asked you about the other day that you said you've just bought.
Oh, Crosscode.
Crosscode, yes. It really reminds me of Crosscode aesthetically, right. But also in its general like flavour, its general styling, the way it's delivered, which is a hugely positive thing. Like that game is a gem, an absolute gem. I find it quite difficult to get emotionally attached to this style of game. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's a combination of the music generally, but this does that really well as well. It really does hook you in emotionally, which is saying a lot really. I'm kind of probably like you. I'm a bit in my old age. I'm a bit more difficult to hook, I'd say, these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got everything's. Your combat has things like you can add in like modules to yourself. So rather than like you'd normally use magic to heal, you would use your module or you'd use your installed unit to do damage on the enemy, or you'd hack them. So they've just kind of reskinned essentially all the things you'd otherwise know intuitively.
Yeah.
But I do like it. When you do your Jack move, you get like a little on-screen quick time event thing and to help you do more damage. But I think, as with many of these things, the takeaway, the thing that's really sticking in my mind is the music.
Is it synth? I take it. I've got a feeling it's going to be synth.
Oh yeah, it's got that. It's just cyberpunk. They almost need to just call a genre of music cyberpunk because it is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just great soundtrack. Really enjoying it so far. Obviously haven't completed it. Only done about an hour really, hour and a half. But potentially, if it sticks the way it started, I might do a full review of this one, just a late one.
Yeah.
So that is me really. That's the last of my games. That's this week. Good one.
Lovely. Yeah. So there we go. So another 6 games. As we always say, please do let us know of any games that you've been playing recently. They don't have to be new releases. It's just about a game that's stuck in your mind for whatever reason, and you would like to share your experiences with it with everyone in the comment section.
Absolutely, yeah. And as always, just a big thanks for watching. If you do want to save 10%, use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. And yeah, like Glenn said, just let us know what you've been playing. It's interesting for us as well. For all things Switch, all the time. And a big thanks to our Patreons. Keep it Switch Up. Cheers, guys. See ya!